Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my Season 15 ranking. Now, Season 15, this has overtaken Season 11 as the weakest season of the show so far. And I'm talking slowly because I'm wondering if my voice is matching up with my visuals because it looks like it's a little bit behind. Anyway, Season 15, well, it's half good and half bad, basically, for me. So, get down to the ranking and I'll explain why. First of all, the stories. They are Horror Fang Rock, The Invisible Enemy, Image of the Fendhal, The Sunmakers, Underworld, and The Invasion of Time. So, quickly jumping in, let's start with number 6. This story is just absolutely bad. I mean, take out the colour separation problems they had, that they used it for more than having to get sets or locations. The story that I'm talking about is just a bad story and bad direction, and doesn't help with this the fact that they did use the color separation thing more than they needed to do. It is Underworld. More like underwhelming, am I right, guys? That was a joke I was actually thinking about having in the review, but I forgot to mention it. But yeah, Underworld or Underwhelming, Underworlding it's just bad. The story is bad. The characters are okay. Well, the allies are. They're okay, but not that much interesting. The villains are awful, and they're rip-offs of Darth Vader, and the plot just isn't that interesting. And also the whole revolution stuff that Leela tries to start in part 3. It's the second time in a row that we've had this type of story this season. I mean, I wouldn't mind if we had 2 of these stories this season, but not in a row. We literally just had a story like this. And it's absolutely boring. It's just boring, dull, uninteresting, and I really couldn't care for it. The first episode is not too bad, but after that, it just goes absolutely downhill. There's some positives in there. The acting from our main leads, including John Leeson in all stories except Horror Fang Rock and Image of the Fendhal, due to him not being in it, and also in Horror and Image not having K9 speaking. But the other stories, including Underworld, John Leeson is a main cast member and therefore gets mentioned, and he does a great job here, as does Tom Baker and Louise Jameson. But sadly, the rest, it just can't hold up very highly. It's a bad story, and yes, I got most of what I needed to say out in the review, and I was a lot more angrier and more annoyed. But I can definitely tell you that Underworld is worth one skipping if you're thinking about skipping any story. This season is actually a story that's worth skipping mostly. But if you're going to sit through them all like I am, good luck. Like I said, if you like Underworld, I'm glad you could. So yeah, it's just that, in my opinion. It's like how I like stories that some people don't like Delta and the Bannerman, for example. Lots of people aren't fond of that story, but I found it good. So yeah, if something like that happened with you and you liked Underworld but you knew lots of people didn't, all praise to you. It's just I couldn't. That's why I had a bit of a rant about it. Yeah, go check out that. Okay, moving on to number 5. Number 5 is another boring, dull, and uninteresting story, but this time it used to be a story I really liked. In fact, until I watched it, it was my favourite story of the season. Now it's here. Yeah, so you can tell how much my opinion has changed on that story after just 2 viewings. At first viewing, it was at the top of the season, and then second viewing, it was nearly at the bottom. And this is Image of the Fendhal. Yeah, I don't know how I loved it on the first time, or nearly loved it, but on this rewatch, I know it's boring, dull, uninteresting, and nothing really happens. It's basically filler, more or less. I'm not completely serious about Miles Taylor and grandson getting a Big Finish spin-off, but I'm not exactly hot, but I'm not completely joking either. It's kind of a 50-50, by the way. But yeah, it's just that they were the most interesting people to follow in Part 3. Part 4 was good, around a similar type of good as Underworld Part 1, but that's about it for the positives. And even Tom Baker and Louise Jameson aren't even up to as good a scratch in this story as any of the other stories. So yeah, and that's also including season 14, and also with Tom Baker since season 12. Yeah, this is probably their weakest performance so far. I mean, Baker does do a good job with his bits. I think Jameson, this is definitely her weakest performance so far. Maybe I was a bit exaggerating with Tom Baker. Certainly, I don't think it'll be his worst performance in the show. But with Jameson, this is certainly her weakest performance, full stop, including Dimensions in Time, where she gets little to do. I think that'd be her next weakest, but certainly this one would be her weakest. Yeah, an image of the Fendhal. It's not that great. The Fendhal themselves look pretty decent for the time, though. But they're not exactly that menacing. Moving on to number 4. Number 4, I actually kind of enjoyed this time around. This one had been my least favourite before rewatching it, and then Underworld took over that. That one had been second least favourite anyway. So, yeah, this story was fun on a rewatch. But the plot is bad. Basically, it's a bad plot, but it's a fun bad plot. So that's why I like it slightly more than I did Image of the Fendhal, and that is The Sunmakers. Yeah, it's basically the plot is about overthrowing some government, some business people because they're taxing everybody to death. Basically, taxes everywhere. How interesting. The revolution idea is a good idea, but it does take a few episodes to get started. But it works better here than Underworld's did. But for both stories' cases, we've done this type of story before and better. And yeah, I like the idea it's set on Pluto. The backstory is actually pretty good, but the fact it's about taxes is just not interesting. Again, as I mentioned in the review, this is a problem Star Wars Episode 1 had. The film Phantom Menace. It had this problem, tax thingy. It's not that interesting. So yeah, unless it was some sort of downfall for a character who was very strong, very lucky, lots of money, and then suddenly there was some sort of tax problem, and that caused dramatic tension. That would work with a drama, I suppose. But for science fiction, it doesn't work. It's too realistic. It's the complete opposite of some of the other types of stories where Doctor Who's just too over the top and too sci-fi or too campy and stuff. This is too realistic, with a very comedic sci-fi element thrown in, but it doesn't quite work. That's why I'm saying it's not a good story, but it's fun for the most part. More fun than some other stories like this. So, yeah, that's the Sunmakers. It's actually went up a score because of that from 4 to 5, but the story's still not very good. Number 3, this is the story that saved the season from being a complete disaster, minus the first 2 stories. And it's still got a few problems. It's a very dull and boring in plenty of places. Very dragged out. Very could have been shorter. Could have been quick, faster paced. And the stuff with Leela falling in love isn't developed enough. Hence her leaving being a little bit abrupt. That is the invasion of time. Yeah, as I mentioned at the very end of my review, as you may remember, I had to quickly mention it just as I was saying next story. I had to quickly throw that last point in before I officially finished up. Leela's romantic relationship with Andrit isn't very well developed. There is some nice moments with her and him being quite friendly with each other, quite nice. But as a romance, not developed at all. Other slow bits, lots of slow bits, as I mentioned, lots of meandering. This is very much the Stephen Moffat written, convoluted series story arc of the classic series, at least at this point, because it is so complicated. It is so hard to follow. It's difficult to follow. You're so confused. It doesn't really make a lot of sense until later on, where they do explain what the heck is going on. But it's not terribly bad. It's not terrible. It's actually pretty good. It's just that it takes forever to sort out, and then you get the bits with the Sontarans, and the Sontarans in this story aren't that good, really. Sontarans after the Sontaran experiment and before the Sontaran stratagem go downhill a bit. So I haven't seen Shakedown or the Mind Game trilogy, but for the TV series is Invasion of Time and two Doctors, they're not that great. I mean, well, here it's more of the fact that they're just badly written, badly performed, whilst Two Doctors, it's more of the fact that they're too tall. But more on that when we get to that. Story in season 22, so a bit of a way to go. But here, I don't like how the Sontarans are used here. They're just they're not that great. They're too over the top, and I really don't like the guy playing the leader. I'm sorry, I couldn't stand him. The Gallifrey sitting works really well for the story, and I actually do like going inside the TARDIS for quite a bit of part 6. It's just that we get lots of slow, dull, and sometimes tedious moments where we're just waiting to get on with it. Deadly Assassin, this is not. Okay, that was a story I did like in this season. Now we're getting on to the great stories of the season that I also really liked. Starting with number 2, which is a story I find underrated. The Invisible Enemy. Yeah, K9's first story. I find it a bit underrated. It's very good. Got some really fun moments. There is a bit of a slowness to start with, I suppose. It does take its time in some places, but it's not as boring or dragged out as the other stories of the season, including my number 1 choice. But that one works with that works with that one for reasons I'll explain there. But I think Invisible Enemy is the fastest paced story of the season, and I kind of enjoy it more for that. Yeah, there's some meandering. Yeah, there's some time taking. Scenes taking their time, but it's still really good, really entertaining, got some really great stuff. K9's great. He made a companion at the end for obvious reasons, why not? And the Swarm leader is actually pretty good, and I actually like the Fendhal. I kind of like the design. The design, it actually looks pretty interesting. I mean, it's not going to set the world on fire like the Daleks, but for what it is, it's actually quite interesting. And the fact that we don't see it until the cliffhanger of part 3 is actually really clever. So, yeah, and unlike the Fendhal, that's how it should have been. That's a good way of being used, as opposed to Fendhal, which really should have been introduced in the part 1 cliffhanger of its story. But nevertheless, Invisible Enemy is a joy for people to watch, and is just really entertaining and really interesting. Highly recommend it. However, number 1, I think, is a slightly better story than Invisible Enemy. That's why that one just about takes it. Now, I did say there was quite a few slow moments in this story, but quite a bit of the time, it does help to add tension. It does help to add atmosphere. Granted, there is just some slow waiting around moments, but there's also moments where this helps build up the tension and or atmosphere. This story is, of course, Horror of Fang Rock. Well, now that Image of the Fendhal has gone down in opinion, there's really only one other choice. This story for being the best of the season, although Invisible Enemy did come very close. But this story has some great atmosphere, great tension. It's a great story. There is a couple of slow moments, as I did mention, and not all of them help with the build-up. And they're just there for slow pacing, just running some time down. But unlike the other stories, minus Invincible Enemy, it doesn't affect the story too much. It's okay. I mean, it's those slow bits that do prevent me from giving this a 10 out of 10, plus some of the side characters. But besides that, this is a great story, and highly deserving of all the respect and praise that it gets. Really good and really interesting, very gothic horror story with a sci-fi twist in a historical setting, and it all works really well. Some little issues, like some of the side characters aren't that great interesting, although they do try their best to write out good personalities and backstories for most of them. One of them dies really stupidly. That it's the lady who was on the boat. She went in the lighthouse. She's supposedly when we see in one shot we see her behind Leela with one of the other guys, and then the next time we see her, she's screaming her head off again. Somehow she's gotten in front of Leela and moved closer to the root in disguise as the lighthouse keeper, and she's just screaming her head off, slightly getting closer to him, and he just puts her hand down on his hand on her head and kills her. Yeah, best death ever. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. They just wanted to kill this character off, so they just did that, and I think it was just a very bad way of handling it. I'm sure it could have, the creature should have just shot a bolt and it would have shot her across the room. Maybe that would have worked, but or caught her in its tentacle as they tried to run out. But that's only one. That's only a small problem. Well, it's not a small problem, but that's really my only problem. Besides some of the pacing, as I did mention, that stopped it from being a 10 out of 10. But not minor problems, or not as many as some of the other stories. But I still think Horror Fang Rock is a really effective story, so that's why it topped the list basically. Although I did enjoy Invisible Enemy quite a lot, I think Horror Fang Rock's story is probably the best of the season. That's why it's number 1. Okay, so I'll run through the list again just to make sure. Number 6 is Underworld, or Underwhelming. Number 5 is Image of the Fendhal. Number 4 is The Sunmakers. Number 3 is The Invasion of Time. Number 2 is The Invisible Enemy. And number 1 is Horror of Fang Rock. Max Headroom hasn't interrupted this broadcast, has he? Oh, thank God. Well, not the real Max Headroom. I mean, the guy's impersonating him. Phew. Yeah, he did that for my review. Before we wrap off, I was curious, where would I put all these seasons in a season ranking? Now, I'm probably going to do a proper season ranking after season 26, maybe even one after season 37, for the classic one, and an overall, plus a new series one, for 27 to 37. But I just wanted to, I was wondering last week, where would I put, up to season 14, where would I put them at that point? And I think I got some sort of list, so I can let you know now that 15 seasons so far. Number 15 would be season 15. Number 14 would be season 11, the John Pertwee one. Number 13 would be season 9. Number 12 would be season... I want to say it's 6. I'll go with 6. Season 6. Number 11 would be season 1. Number 10 would be season 8. Number 9 would be season 3. Number 8 would be season 5. Number 7 would be season 4. Season 2. Number 6 would be season 4. Number 5 would be season 14. Number 4 would be season 10. Number 3 would be season 12, number 2 would be season 13, and number 1 would be season 7. So, yeah, some people might prefer some seasons more. This is basically my list. I did say 5 was better than 3, didn't I? 9 and 8, yeah. Okay, so that's about it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for season 16, the Key to Time saga. With the Ribos operation kickstarting. I think that's a good one, but not not one that will set the world on fire. I think it might not even it might be okay. We'll see how it goes. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Hold on, I just said that. including John Leeson in all stories except Invasion of Time. Except Horror Fang Rock and also Image of the Fendhal, but including John Leeson, except in this is very much the fuck off. This is very much the Stephen Moffat convoluted series arc story of this side of the classic series. This is very much the Stephen Moffat convoluted. This is very much the convoluted Stephen Moffat story season arc. This is very, and yeah, the stuff on Gallifrey. Me. So anyway, number 3. Now that's if I forgot to mention it earlier. Forgot to say it earlier. Okay, on to the good story, the really good stories of series 3. Okay, that was one of. I mean, maybe that's what it stops it from being a story from being a 10 out of 10. But it's, but everything else doesn't. But it doesn't hold it back from being a. Number 4 is the Sunmakers. Yeah, stop notifying me. Excuse me. Lots of notifications at the very same time.